lovely workshop.
Thank you very much for our members and all the guests that we have this evening. Again, I welcome you, and we are very privileged to have Mr. Willie Jones join us today. Mr. Jones is a world traveler and has enjoyed many cultures and customs in many lands. As he just shared with us, in August of 1997, he reached the pinnacle of success as the world champion of public speaking. He was named the world champion of public speaking by Toastmasters International, excuse me. Willie won the international competition by besting 270,000 eligible members of more than 8,500 clubs in 60 countries around the world. As the world champion of public speaking, Willie travels all over the United States, Europe, and Africa, conducting seminars, workshops, and motivating audiences with his unique keynote addresses. Today, Mr. Jones will be sharing the winning edge. Please help me welcome Mr. Jones.
Everyone, let me see, make sure I do this. So can you see my screen, my presentation?
Not yet.
Let me know when you can.
Yes, now I can.
Okay. I am Willie Jones, as was just stated, and my presentation is called The Winning Edge, and there's a reason for that. I joined Toastmasters in 1980. I was in the Air Force. A friend of mine kept asking me to go to Toastmaster meetings, and I kept saying no because I'm not a joiner by nature. And I thought that it was some tricky type of club like the Masons or something where you have rituals, and I didn't want to be a part of that, so I politely declined, and I did this over several months because he was persistent. One day he came and he said, tomorrow's my birthday, and I'd like for you to go to my Toastmasters meeting with me as a birthday present. And he was my true friend, and I said, okay, I'll go. And I went to the Toastmasters meeting and I joined that day. And the reason I joined was because of the evaluation portion. Once I saw the evaluation portion, I said to myself, you know, I give talks in the leadership school here on the base, and I give talks in race relations seminars and things, but no one ever says to me how they heard what I said, how they felt about it. And I think this was a novel way to improve your ability to communicate. That's why I joined Toastmasters that day. So as I joined Toastmasters, I began to learn that there are many different aspects to public speaking, something that I had not previously even thought about. I was a good speaker, so I thought, and therefore I wasn't really interested in reading a lot of books about it. So competitions came in the first year, and I watched the competitions, and I said, I can do that. And then in the second year, I said, I can do that. But in Arizona at the time, the National Speakers Association is headquartered in Arizona. And there were some powerful, world-renowned speakers living in Phoenix, Arizona at that time. So it wasn't like I was going to go out there and compete against just ordinary people. There were some stalwarts there. I didn't have enough sense to be intimidated by them. So I was just amused. That maybe give you a hint about my ego. Anyway, on the third year, I decided that I was going to enter the contest. There was a gentleman in our club. His name was Milt Wood. He had been the district winner in the prior year and was expected to go back again, as Toastmasters usually do. In my club, surprisingly, I beat him. Now, I don't, to this day, don't know why I beat him. I just know I beat him. And then they told me what I had to do after that. At the time, I didn't know anything about area, division, district contest. They just said, on this day, you have to go do the contest again. So I did all of those things and get to the district contest. I win the district contest, much to the surprise of everyone in the audience. No one hardly knew me, and much to my surprise, because I had no idea why I won the contest. The regional contest that year was held in Kansas City, Kansas. I flew to Kansas, and there was a winner from the prior year who had won the regional the year before. He was back that year, and he was the odds-on favorite to go on to the World Championship. Well, I beat him. And here I am now standing there with this huge trophy, and the next stop is the World Championship, and I have no idea what I'm doing. And so I go back to Phoenix. I have this 3-foot trophy, and I'm happy as a lark, and I'm on TV, I'm on radio, and everyone is treating me like a celebrity, and I'm not even preparing for the finals because I don't even know I need a new speech. So someone told me what the rules were, and I decided to do a speech that I knew very well and I liked very well. The name of the speech is The Warm Boot. Not The Warm Boot, it's called, I don't remember the name because Warm Boot's in my mind. That's my winning speech. I gave this, so at the contest, which was in San Diego, California, I was speaker number 1. I didn't know speaker number 1 was a bad position to be in. I thought it was pretty good. So as I got up to speak that morning, I said to myself, my goal is to set the pace. I'm going to be so good that everyone else is going to fade away and the judges are going to choose me as the winner. That was my attitude. I went on the stage and I did every single thing I wanted to do exactly the way I wanted to do it. I was absolutely thrilled at my own performance. I wasn't nervous. And I sat down. The applause was okay, but at the time, since I'm the first one getting applause, I didn't know whether it was the best or not, but I was okay with it. Sat back down on the front row with the other 8 speakers sitting there. I watched speaker number 2, and I wasn't impressed. Speaker number 3 came on, and his name was Roy Finstemacher. And the title of his speech was Retirement Never. And Roy was, I think, 70 years old. At the time, I thought 70 was ancient. I don't think that today, but I thought it at that time. So Roy, about 2 minutes into his speech, he dropped the microphone. Back in those days, microphones were wired. So when he dropped the microphone, it sort of rolled and the audience hushed, and he deftly reached down, picked up that microphone and continued his speech as if nothing had happened. And the audience sent a wave of energy to the stage that the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I felt the energy going across my head to the stage to embrace him. And Roy went on to become the world champion that year. So Roy, when he finished speaking, I wanted to get up and give him a round of applause. When he won the contest, I also thought he had won the contest, but I was wondering to myself, what is it that was going over my head heading to that stage? How was that energy created? What did he do? And that became my quest, because I said at that moment, there's a lot I don't know about public speaking. And obviously, there's more to it than just meets the eye. So if I'm ever going to do this again, maybe I should try studying this stuff. So I went back to the Toastmaster universe. I picked up those manuals 1 through 10, and I started doing those speeches. And I started doing those speeches without telling anybody what it is that I was looking for in terms of the audience. And what I was actually trying to find and perfect was the ability to orchestrate a speech in a way that the audience responded the way I wanted them to respond. So I went through all 10 speeches. Some of them I did over if I didn't get the right response. And I started working on it, and became clear to me that you have a lot of power as a speaker if you understand the nonverbal side of the speaking environment. If you understand the power of pauses and movement and all of the things that speakers do that are nonverbal. And that was where I thought the treasure was. Go find it in that area of speaking. So I set about to perfect the art of being able to control the entire environment in a room if I'm giving a speech. And that's what I did. I learned it. I practiced it. I perfected a little bit. I fell back a little bit. And finally, in 1996, here in Hawaii, I had not been in Hawaii but a couple of years. And I decided that I was going to go win the world championship. I didn't decide that I was going to go compete. I said I'm going to go win it. And the reason I said I was going to go win it is because I had done the work. I knew I had done the work. I knew I had learned the things that I needed to learn, and I was ready to roll. Obviously, I went on to win the contest, but I'll tell you a couple of things about the contest that we'll talk about in the Winning Edge. And at the contest itself, I drew speaker number 8. So by this time, I understood that being a late speaker was a great thing. So I had a perfect position. The other thing is I sat there watching 7 speakers speak. And I watched them as they moved on the stage. I watched everything that they did. And I learned something. And what I learned was they all stayed in the same area. That the depth of vision that the audience had to focus on remained the same through the 7 speakers. So their eyes were probably pretty bored because they were focused on that one spot where those speakers stood. So the speakers, you go to center stage at the beginning of your speech and you stand on a cross that's sitting there, or an X, whatever it is. And after the Toastmaster introduces you, you can go any place on the stage you want. Those are your instructions. Most of the people move side to side. Very few move forward toward the edge of the stage, which was about 10 feet in front of you. So I said to myself, okay, I'm going to change the depth perception of the audience by movement. And so that was the first thing. The second thing that I decided, sitting there waiting to speak, is that all 7 prior speakers pretty much were pretty bland in the beginning of their speeches. And the audience sort of anticipated the next speaker, not in a way of changing their focus or changing their thought, but it was sort of like, here comes another speaker. Well, I wanted to change that. I wanted the audience to say, what is that? It's something new. And I wanted their minds to have to recalibrate when I started speaking. So what did that mean? That meant that I needed to change the opening of my speech because this is all being done spontaneously. I go on stage, I'm introduced, I walk deliberately out to the edge of the stage. The audience is looking at me and I know what they're doing. They are saying, what is he doing? Because I didn't stay where the other speakers stayed. I'm on the edge of the stage. And the first words I said were, I'm going to come out here to the edge of this stage so you can get a good look at this fella. Well, that sounds kind of odd, but I said that because I wanted them to say, what does that mean? You know? And as I walked across the stage, I said the line that was actually the opening line of my speech. And I said, I got my letter from the AARP. And if any of you have watched the speech, you will see the audience response when I uttered that line. And it was the exact response that I knew that I would get. So let's go to the winning edge. So that's me leading you up to the winning edge. The winning edge is about what's the difference between coming in a close second or just missing your mark a little bit. What is the difference? What is it that you need to do in order to win the contest? So I'm not talking about winning just a Toastmasters contest. I'm talking about getting what you want from the things that you're trying to do. So there are some areas that we're going to discuss. The first one is preparation. What are you going to say? Why are you going to say it? Who are you going to speak to? Where are you going to do it? And how you're going to do it. What are you going to say? Well, speaking is about having something to say. Point is, why should I listen to you? You know, I don't know you. And if you tell me your life story, I don't care about your life story. You know, I don't care about your whatever happened in your life and how you overcame it. It may be a nice story, and I may say, okay, but I didn't come here to hear that because I don't know you. Why am I telling you? So why do you tell people things? In other words, why did I say that day that I got my letter from the AARP? The reason I said that is because I knew that more than 50% of the people sitting in that room had received that letter. I knew that because I knew that the age of that people in that room was north of 50 in most cases. And you get the letter when you're 49. We all do. No matter where you are, they'll hunt you down. You get the letter. Who am I talking to? Well, you have to know the audience. One of the things that, as an example, I'm a war veteran. I was in Vietnam for 2 years. I have a distinguished flying cross, which makes me a war hero in some people's eyes. If I'm talking to a group of people where that particular part of my bio would be something that eyebrows would raise and they would feel more warm toward me, I add that. So the point I'm saying is that you have to know who you're talking to, and you have to figure out a way to bond with that person. And that doesn't have to be an audience. It could be one person. Oftentimes I talk to people who are real estate agents, and I say to them, you know, do you really think you're selling real estate when in fact you're only selling yourself? You know, a person buys something from somebody they like. You may be the best real estate agent in the world, but they don't like you, they're not going to buy anything from you. So the point is, if you don't establish some bond between yourself and the person in front of you or your audience, well, you're not going to get very far. The next thing is how you're going to speak. Are you going to use props? If you use a prop, then you better use it well. I have a rule. If you sing, it's okay to sing, but there are two things about singing. You either have to be very good. I mean, you have to be Lady Gaga good, or you have to be very bad. You cannot be just mediocre. You have to be very good or very bad, because both of those things can get a desired response from the audience. If you remember in a couple of years ago, a few years ago, we started having world champions use props on stage, and a couple of people have won the contest using props. They use the props very well. So again, using props are permissible, but that raises the risk that something will go wrong. So you want to minimize the things that you're going to do that may go wrong. So that's how you prepare. Now, another thing, people say to me, do you write your speeches and rehearse? I say no, but there's nothing wrong with that. Some people do that. David Brooks won the speech contest, and he had choreographed every single word in his speech. I don't do that. What I do is I write down ideas, and I write down points that I want to make. And I am confident enough that I can fill in the words based on the audience feedback that I'm getting at the time. There is no correct way to do it. The main thing is that it has to come from a place that's authentic inside of you. You can go on stage and you can do a performance, and that could work if you're very well at it. Most people are not. But if you're being authentic, you can get to the winner's circle being authentic and making technical errors. So authenticity will trump pretty much anything. So let's go to the next slide. What is your message? Messages need to be powerful, motivational, humorous, or inspirational. They can be all of those things together, or they can be one of those things. But what is the message, though? In a 5 to 7 minute speech, the message, in a 45-minute speech, in a 5 to 7 minute speech, in a 2-hour speech, no matter how long the speech is, the message is the part at the end. At the end of your speech, there's something you want the audience to do. You want them to be inspired. You want them to be motivated. You want them to go do something. But everything prior to that message is leading them to the message. That's the point. The point is that the message is the key. The message is the place where you're trying to get them to go. The opening is the bonding place. Your opening, I talked to you about singing already. If you're going to do a quote, the quote has to be absolutely precise. It has to be absolutely precise, and you have to give credit to the author and know who they are. Don't mispronounce their name. There's always people in the audience who know the quote. They know the quote and they know the author. So you just can't come on and say somebody said. If you're going to quote somebody, give them credit for the quote and make sure that you pronounce their name correctly. Jokes. If you tell a joke, it needs to be funny, right? You just don't tell a joke because you think it's funny. It has to be prepared for that audience. If you're going to tell a story, and I believe that stories are the best things, and this is the place where I think most speakers make mistakes. Speakers tell stories in speeches. Most often they're personal stories because we are trained in Toastmasters and in other places that personal stories are the best. And that's true. But the reason you're telling the story is not so the audience can understand you better. Your story must be a metaphor for something bigger. It cannot be just a story about you, because that's not why you tell the story. I tell the story of almost getting killed in Vietnam and what happened after that, and people are going, oh, but that's not the point of much. The point of me telling that story is when I'm talking about patriotism and love of country and how I was able to persevere and get through it. That's the reason I tell the story, in order to establish some credibility for telling the larger point. So stories are metaphors. Always remember that the story itself is not the point. It's a metaphor for something bigger. These are no-nos. It's not about you. It's never about you. Nobody cares about you. It's about them. What's in it for me? What's in it for me, the audience? The next one is jargon. People use jargon and acronyms and abbreviations and things that some people may understand, but most people won't. Stay away from that stuff. Stay away from sex, politics, or religion. There was a young lady in the contest, and I think it was 1989, and I was at the contest. She came to me and asked me for some assistance, and I said, okay, which I always will do. So as she was practicing her speech, she used the word eros, E-R-O-S, eros. And so I said to her, don't use that word. And she said, why not? And I said, because it can have different connotations. It could have a sexual connotation. You don't want the audience to think anything out of the way, so just don't use that word. Use another word. She was a little offended because she wanted to use the word. Look, she didn't win the contest. I don't think the word had anything to do with it, but my point is you don't want an audience to have to think twice about what you're saying. You don't want to take the risk of offending anybody. Stay away from politics, religion, and sex. Confusing gestures. That happens all the time, right? Where the person don't know what to do with their hands, so they just flail away. And gestures are as important as content, because gestures take a word and turns it into real life. If you raise your hands toward the heavens and you say it's all the way to the heavens, then your hands are raised above your head. The people will get a picture in their mind of the heavens. So gestures, hand gestures, are very, very important because they create what I call word pictures in the people's minds. Ambiguous words, we just talked about that. Unnatural vocal variety. Unnatural vocal variety is when you are pretending you're someone else and your characterization of that person. In other words, you say, the lady said this, oh, Willie, how are you doing today? Well, you don't want to do that. It's not necessary for you to try and make the voice of a female because you think somehow that's going to make me know anything better. If you want to tell me something about someone else, you can use your own voice. You don't have to, you can move If I wanted to tell you something that the lady in front of me said, I can move to her spot and I could tell you that in my voice, and it would have a better effect than me trying to sound like Mickey Mouse or change the pitch of my voice in an unnatural way. Transitions will make you greater, or they won't. A transition can be done with a pause. A transition can be done with gestures, movement, laughter, prop, sound. The whole point of a transition is to stop the thought that the audience has or the picture in their head, put a blank screen there, and then to change the scene when the next thing comes on. I'll say that again. A transition is you're changing what the audience is thinking to a new subject. That can be done in a lot of different ways. It doesn't have to be done just one particular way. You just have to know why you're doing it. What's the importance of a transition? If I'm talking about the sun and then I want to start talking about the moon, I have to transition from moon to sun. So transitions are absolutely critical to be done correctly, or the audience will be left behind, and by the time they catch up with you, it's a little bit too late. So once you get to the body of your speech, anecdotes are great. Your story is the greatest thing in the world if it's a metaphor for something bigger. Facts. If you give a fact, you have to be absolutely certain that it is a fact, not something you heard on Facebook, not something you saw on the internet. It must be a true fact, because there's always people in the audience who are smarter than you. Don't ever forget that. There are people in the audience who are smarter than you, no matter what you think of yourself. The probing questions. A probing question is a question that, again, you want the audience mind to go someplace. You know, is there life after death? You know, is there a place called heaven? What is it about democracy that makes it such a great idea? Have you ever considered moving to another country and changing your culture and your language? And why would you do that? Dilemmas. Dilemmas are tricky. The reason dilemmas are tricky is because you're taking the focus off of you on stage, and you're sort of giving the audience a puzzle. And giving the audience a puzzle sort of sends them inward. You always want the audience focus to be on you and what you're doing. But if you set up a dilemma, you have to move through it quickly and have to be very clear. And so that you understand that a person making a choice about something and asking the audience, what choice would you make, is a tricky situation. I don't recommend dilemmas, but oftentimes I hear speakers who pose dilemmas, and it sort of breaks up their rhythm as they're speaking, and I don't particularly like that myself. You're into the body of the speech. It's sort of like a journey. You're telling jokes, you're doing anecdotes, you're getting them to the point where you're going to get to the end of the talk. Transition to the conclusion. What's the difference from transitioning from the opening to the body and transitioning from the body to the conclusion? When you transition from the opening, in an opening, let's review. The opening of a speech has one purpose. That's for you to bond with the audience. You want them to say, or to not say, you want them to think, I like this person and I want to hear what they have to say. Those are the two things you want the audience to think at the beginning of your speech. If you don't have the ability to sense that they are there with you, you may lose them. However, I believe that we all have, there's nothing magical about it. You just have to be in tune with them. You can sense when the audience is with you. But the purpose of the transition from the opening to the body is like you're a ticket master and you've just sold the audience tickets to get on this bus, this shiny bus that you have sitting there. So the transition from opening to the body is they all agree to get on the bus. You haven't even told them where you're taking them, but you've done so well with your opening that they go, yeah, I think I'll do this. And they get on the bus and they're sitting there waiting for you to give them an idea of where it is you're going to take them. The body of your speech is the journey itself. It's a journey to the end. But as you're taking them on this journey, you take them through the valley, you take them over the mountain, you take them over the bridge, you take them through a city, you take them to the countryside. All the time you're narrating these scenes for them, you're entertaining them, you're motivating them, you're inspiring them, and they're having a great time on your bus, having a great time. And finally, you get to the place where it's now time to come to the journey to come to a close. That's when you decide what you're going to do, what is your message going to be about. There's a couple of things you do when you're ready to deliver the message. After you make the transition, and the transition has to be powerful. What do I mean by that? I say to speakers, make sure that before you transition to the message, you are not at center stage. You have to position yourself someplace else on the stage so that when it's time for you to deliver the message, you want to be deliberate and purposeful and walk to center stage. What that does, it draws the attention of the audience to the center of the stage, and it psychologically prepares them for something that's important. And it is important because the most important thing you're going to say that day is what you're about to say at the end. The end of speeches is about motivating and inspiring and asking people to do something. Do you want them to? And ladies and gentlemen, I urge you, when you leave here today, go down and register yourself to vote. And on Tuesday of next week, I want you to go out, get that ballot, go into that booth and vote. Will you do that for me? And they'll go, yes. And you ask them again, and then you ask them again. And pretty soon, the whole place is trembling with excitement because they're ready to go. You've been preparing them for that by talking about the power of voting, by talking about all of the things that needs to be done, and all through the speech. That was your point. Winston Churchill said, we'll never give up, never give up, and never give up. And he kept saying that over and over and over again. And he became one of the most powerful leaders and speakers in the world by simply engaging people and telling them we're not going to lose this war. And he motivated an entire nation and indeed the world to stand up. So the whole idea of the end of your speech, the whole idea of giving a speech, whether it's to one person, 1,000 or 10,000, the techniques, the procedures, the mechanics of it all work exactly the same way. At the World Championship in 1997, when I finished speaking, at the beginning of my speech, I told the audience to remember a sound because I was going to ask them to repeat it. At the end of my speech, I asked them, what was that sound? And they gave that sound to me loudly. I go back to my seat with the other 8 speakers. Speaker number 9 that day didn't know what hit him. I don't even remember. I don't think he wanted to even go on the stage. He was so intimidated. But as I'm sitting there with all 8 other 7 speakers, the judge, the Toastmaster had to tell the audience to be quiet so that they could announce the number 9 speaker. What that told me, the fact that the audience was still vibrating on a frequency that could be heard in the room, is that they were absolutely on my side. 12 o'clock, I have the trophy. I'm standing in the hallway in New Orleans in the hotel. I'm signing autographs, I'm taking pictures, I'm hugging people, they're hugging me. And it occurred to me to ask a question of people. And I'd say to people who would come up to me, I'd say, what did I talk about? And 99% of them saying, I don't know. but it sure made me feel good. So I accomplished my task. I didn't go there that day to win that contest by having a content-driven speech. I went there that day to do what Roy Fenstermacher did in 1983. I wanted the audience to embrace me with their energy, and I wanted them to love me. And I wanted them to love me over anyone else in that contest. And I wanted them to show that love to me by doing things that I asked them to do and to stay on that vibration for as long as possible. I accomplished all of those things. And the reason that I was able to do it with success is because of Toastmasters. And I'll say this, and Toastmasters is the only thing I've ever joined. I'm not a joiner. I'm still not a joiner. The reason that I am in Toastmasters and I'm the world champion and I go to my club meetings and I'm the club president and I go talk, I do officer training, I do all of those things is because I know the power of public speaking. I know the power of being able to do this in a way where you are accomplished at it. I also know that the only place on planet Earth where you can acquire these skills in an environment that is not only beneficial, but helpful and educational is within the Toastmaster universe. The final thing I'll say to you is if someone asks you, why do you do this? My tagline is, because it works. That's why I do it. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jones. I'll give you a moment to, oh, thank you. Stop sharing your screen. I think that's very appropriate for your audience. You know your audience. Most of us all want to compete. I have competed and I will be competing this year, 2020. And I found many takeaways, but I will now turn the meeting over to our question master, Isabel Kadori. Isabel, I saw a couple questions flash through. Would you please pick a few that Mr. Jones can answer for us?
Okay. Well, it's really a very educational speech from Mr. Jones. I really enjoyed it. And I have 5 questions here. And the first question from Kenan is, when did you feel you were ready for the World Champion contest?
The year that I won it, 1997, I thought that I was ready in about 1995, about 2 years prior to the contest. I had learned everything that I thought I needed to learn. I was supremely confident in my ability to navigate all aspects of public speaking, and I was just waiting for the opportunity to enter the contest and win it. It never crossed my mind. It never, ever crossed my mind that I would not win the contest.
Great. Do you have wonderful confidence on your winning? I think that does help because it avoids the distraction by thinking about a failure. It makes all the effort focused. And our next question is from President Aaron. His question is, can you demonstrate to us what are a few confusion gestures and how to correct it?
Okay, so can you see me?
Yeah.
It's just like if someone says, open the door. They do that. That's not open the door. If you want someone to open the door, you make a gesture that indicates, here's open the door. So if you want someone, as the gesture that I talked about, if you want someone to know something is as big as the sun, you don't go, it's as big as the sun. You go, it's as big as the sun. The gesture needs to project the picture of what the word is saying. And human beings think in pictures. And so if you say it was really, really really small. You see, you're not just doing it was really, really, I can do this and say it was really, really small. And that indicates that. But what if I said it was really, really small? Doesn't that amplify? So, but if I said it was really, really small and I just put my hand out like this, it was really small. Well, that's not telling me anything. That's what I mean.
Thank you. I love your demonstration. The next question is, how long should one plan for the transitions? You talked about transitions.
How long what? Would you repeat, please?
How long should one plan for transitions?
How long should I plan for them?
Maybe we should have President Aaron to explain this question a bit better.
Okay.
So I was actually planning to ask, like you mentioned about transition is very important in our speech, and every transition actually give us anticipation, give us time to know exactly what your stress or emphasis would be. So my question would be, how long do you plan for a transition? Like if I delay for 1 or 2 seconds for this part, how long do I gauge a transition duration?
It depends on what are you going to use for the transition. It also depends on what the audience is doing. Let's say that in your opening, you've told a joke or you've said something funny and the audience is laughing. And in your practice, you did not factor that much laughter in. So the audience is sort of really with you. My advice is always let the audience laugh. Don't cut them off. Laugh with them because that's infectious. But you say to yourself, I can't let them laugh too long because I got to get on with the speech. Well, then your transition may be a little bit longer because you're trying to quiet them down. Now, let's use the opposite thing. Let's say that you told a joke and it fell flat. And then you got a few murmurs in the audience, but nobody really gave you what you wanted. Well, now you have to pump them up with the transition. You have to say something or do something that's going to bring them back up emotionally so that you can go on to the next subject. You cannot ignore the emotional state of the audience. You always have to be aware that is the audience where I need them to be emotionally before I make this transition. And if they are where you need them to be, your transition can be seamless. You could take 2 steps, or you could look up in the sky, or you could flip your hand. Anything can make a transition if the audience is in perfect harmony, but normally they're not. And so you have to be aware that I know I need to move on to the next part of the speech. How do I do it and make sure the audience understands that it's time to move? So the amount of time is, the answer to your question is, the amount of time is depending on where the audience is at the time that you need to do it.
Thank you, Willie. Our next question is from Bruce Yu. He must think you have the magic power that you can make audience fall in love with you at the first sight. So he wants you to explain how can you make it happen. Any techniques?
That's a great question. I'm a very friendly guy naturally, but I know the power of smiling and being warm. So when I go on the stage, I'm going to go out there and I am radiating warmth and I'm radiating fun and I'm radiating, I'm a great guy. And I'm smiling and I'm waving and I'm pointing at people and saying, how are you? And I'm doing all sorts of things, but everything that I'm doing is deliberate. It's spontaneous in a lot of cases, but I absolutely know what I'm doing. You need the audience to love you. If you're in a Toastmaster speech, you don't get to do your introduction. You'll be introduced, but the title of your speech, you need to, I'm glad, let me just say this, but this is also important. The title of your speech is a part of your speech. So as an example, the title of my speech was A Warm Boot. Now, you don't know what that is. The audience don't know what that is. So I know that the audience doesn't know what that is. So I want to put a little mystery in there for them too. I wonder what that's about. That helps me move to where I want to move. So the way that there are 2 things to answer your question. First, you want to be as likable as possible when you come out on the stage. and you want to be smiling, you want to be, your eyes are twinkling, and you want to be very open in your physical presence, not closed up, not anything except, I love this guy. Oh, I like him. You want to be dressed in a way that they find appealing. What do people find appealing? What do they don't find appealing? Of course, pinstripes are not appealing. Polka dots are not appealing. You know, white socks are not appealing. You know, so you have to dress the way the audience finds appealing. That all of these little things are helpful. They're not things that, I remember I was at a contest and there was a young man from Australia. I wish I could remember his name. I need to. I talk about him all the time. I have to get his name. But he didn't win. I thought he won the contest, the international contest that night. And I was upset because he didn't win it. Later on that evening, I met one of the judges, and I didn't know he was a judge, but he was an old friend of mine. And he came up to me and we hugged each other, and he said to me he was a judge. And I wanted to know, why did the young man from Australia not win the contest? And this is what he said to me. Did you see what he was wearing? This is an international judge who said to me, did you see what he was wearing? And that told me the whole story. So you want him to love you. You do everything and anything in your power to make that true. How you dress, how you walk, how you look, how you smile, how your posture is. At the beginning of your speech, you want them to say, I like this person.
I see. There are a lot of things goes into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, many of our members are thinking along the same line. Here's a question from Cheryl Poirier. Her question is, because you are able to get the audience on your side, would you train politicians? Why or why not?
I've been training politicians for 20 years. And it doesn't matter which party. I'm not training them to do what I want them to do. You know, politicians are the worst public speakers that I have ever encountered. They are absolutely terrible. And the reason they usually are terrible is because they don't believe what they're saying. You know, they're only saying things because some consultant told them to say it. So they don't even know how to say it. So and so I've been a political consultant. I worked on Barack Obama's senatorial campaign. Yeah. So what I do, I tell people that I'm responsible for Barack Obama being president because I helped him get elected to the Senate. Of course, that's not true, but it's a good line to use. But my point is, yes, I do work with politicians. I work with CEOs. I work with people who are full of themselves. Because one of the things that I always help them to understand is nobody cares, you know, that with your big title or whatever it is you have, they didn't come here for that. They came to find out what's in your head or what's in your heart. And you have to somehow impart that with your words and with the things that you do here today. So yes, I work with politicians all the time. And one of the reasons I'm not a politician is because politics is really, really nasty. It's not something you want ever to do unless there's some benefit to you. I would not recommend anybody. Of course, I want politicians to do what I want them to do. They don't normally do that, but I don't want to be a politician. And it's not a good profession in my mind.
Thank you. I think if the politician shares your technique, they will become much more powerful.
Absolutely would. Absolutely would. I think that if you are good at public speaking, as I am good, I could be a great politician. The problem with me being a politician is I'm not good at looking you in the face and telling you something I don't believe. That's where I fail. I'm not good at that, and I don't want to be good at that. So I'm not a politician.
That's a truthful statement. Next question is, I think this member is probably inspired to become a world champion. This is Ian from Philippines. His question is district culture connected connected to the positivity and power of the speaker once he or she is in international platform?
I need you to say that again.
I guess it's talking about if somebody is in international platform, is district culture, the culture that within the district that he come from, is the culture connected to the positivity and the power of the speaker?
The culture that he comes from?
Yeah, I guess that's the best I can explain. Maybe we could have Ian.
Well, I put it this way. I think your culture does have an effect. I think your height has an effect. I think the color of your hair has an effect. I think everything about you is unique. And therefore, you have to anticipate what is it that the audience is going to be thinking about me before they know anything about me. When I walk into the room, what are some of the things that are going to go through people's heads? And I have to figure out a way to neutralize or counter those things as best that I can. One of the things that I tell people where English is their second language, don't tell people that English is your second language. That's pretty obvious. Okay, the second thing is our ears are magical machines. If you start speaking in a language with an accent, it won't take us very long where our ears will tune up to your frequency and we'll understand everything you say. So don't think we don't understand. We do understand. So don't temper your presentation by thinking, oh, my English is not good. People who speak English is good is not good. You know, so the point is, you have to be, the thing that we're always looking for in a speaker is, I'll use this word again, authenticity. Is it coming from inside of them? If it is, we're going to get where you are. If you're speaking even close to something we can understand, we will understand it. Don't make apologies for it. Don't say, I'm going to don't tell us what you're going to tell us. Just tell us. We'll understand.
I agree with you. Our next question is from Sunny Fridge. Her question is, you have done great job giving tips for bonding with your audience. Have you ever talked to Rotary Club members or a similar organization? If so, what tips do you have to connect with them if you have 10 to 15 minutes to talk?
I've talked to Rotary clubs all over the world. And depends on what the Rotary is. I remember I was in Nairobi, Kenya, and I had a chance to speak to the Rotary Club in Nairobi, Kenya. Now, I need to give you a little bit more information. The Rotary Club in Nairobi, Kenya were mostly Indians from India, but they were not from India by birth. They were born in Kenya, but they had been brought over by their families because they were merchants and they built railroads or whatever it is that they did during the colonial period. So now they are the business sector in Kenya, whereas the Africans, who were the dominant population, didn't have the skills because they were colonialized. And once colonialism was over, they didn't have any money or any skills to do anything. So all of these business people in this room that I'm talking to, Rotarians, were 99% were Indians. And so the one thing that I said to them is, I said to them, I need to give you a story, a true story about your country. I said, the other day I was at the Holiday Inn with some friends, just like you, and we were having drinks and poo-poos or hors d'oeuvres, and the waiter was an African. And at the end of our little thing, I offered to give the African a tip. And I gave him a tip equivalent to the bill, which was probably maybe $15. And I gave him a $15 tip. And everyone at the table told me I had made a mistake. And I said, why? And they said, because that $15 that you just gave that guy is probably more money than he makes in a month. And so I said, so? And they said, well, you just don't want to do that. So I'm talking to the Rotarians, and I say, you guys are the business sector here in this country. Do you think that you can survive and prosper if you keep the people who are the majority, the huge majority population in this country, if you don't help their boats rise too? Do you think that's possible? And no one said anything. I said, I only tell you that because, and I told them the story that I just told you. And I said to them that the principle that I'm making is that you'll either go up together or you're going down together. There's no other way for me to say this to you. So yes, I talk to Rotary clubs, I talk to Lions clubs, I talk to Elks clubs, I talk to people in old folks' homes. I'm a prolific speaker. And although I am a highly paid speaker on some occasions, I speak for free. If someone calls me up and say, we don't have any money, can you come and talk? I'll say yes, 100% of the time.
Thank you. My next question, the next question here is from Cheryl Poirier. However, I have hard time to understand your question. Cheryl, would you please bring your question directly to Mr. Jones? Please unmute yourself.
Is that the question about the timing?
Yeah.
Okay. If you're in a speech contest, there is that rule that the timing starts when the speaker starts to communicate with the audience. So if you are coming out on the stage in the contest, do you recommend that current speakers today still do that hi and they're waving and include it as part of their 7-minute speech?
I don't recommend you do any of those things if you have something else that you're going to do to bond with the audience. I don't have a technique that's standard. What I'm saying is that at the beginning of your speech, you have about 60 to 90 seconds to bond with the audience. Do with it what you will, but your purpose is to bond with the audience. And I only use that part about being friendly is because in some cases that would work for me. But again, let's say that I'm doing a patriotic speech. Well, I wouldn't do that. I would walk out to center stage and stand ramrod straight, and have people think about the Star Spangled Banner playing in the background. I create an image, I create a word picture, I create a thought in their mind that I want to create. That's the point of the opening.
Oh, thank you for your clarification.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Our last question here is from Adrian. Her question is, if there is no way to know who your audience is, what can we do in our speech to learn more about the audience so that we can cater our speech for them?
I don't know how you would not know. How would I not know? Anybody got any examples how you would not know who your audience is? I've never spoken before anyone and I didn't know who they were or how to get more information. Someone asked me, could I speak to the Hawaii Society of Mechanical Engineers? And I said, sure. I don't know who they are, but of course I went out and Googled them and I looked them up and I said, oh, these are who these people are. Now, I don't know them individually, but I had some idea of who it is that I'm going to be speaking to that night. I get their program, I read their program. What does their program say? So if this is in a non-Toastmaster environment, in a Toastmaster environment, you always know. There's going to be a room full of DTMs and past district governors and as club members. You're not going to have a whole lot of regular members there because you don't usually find them at these contests. And I think that you usually are going to find the most experienced Toastmasters, and you kind of know who they are. You know the ones who are the judges. I mean, we all know that. If you've been around for a while, you know that Bob doesn't like you so much. So you need to stroke his ego. You need to walk in the room. Hey, Bob, how you doing, buddy? You do what you have to do to win within the limits of the rules, of course.
Thank you. I love your humor.
Before you say that, let me say this. This is important also. if you don't plan to win the contest, don't enter the contest. What I mean by that, people say, well, I'm just going to do the best I can. That's not good enough. Nobody enters a race to do the best they can. You enter the race to win the race. And you have to believe you're going to win it. You cannot go in and say, and when people say, I'm just glad I had a chance to quit, that's baloney. If I don't win, I'm not happy. So don't come telling me that it's just enough to participate. I don't want your certificate. I don't want none of that stuff. I want the trophy, or I don't want anything. So if you're going to enter a contest, if you don't believe that you're going to win the contest, don't enter the contest.
Thank you. Well, I have a question myself. I love when you say about authenticity. I feel authenticity is the key to appeal your audience. And I've seen some, because my daughter is a swimmer, and sometimes we watch swim videos, and I've seen a lot of those athletes. They got a lot of interviews. I've seen one was particularly strike me as all correct but not authentic. It was, I think, I may remember her name is Missy Franklin. She was a great swimmer. She became a world champion when she was still around like 17, 18. And when she was interviewed, she was so humble. It make me think, like, if you are so humble, it's all about others, about team, then there's no point for you to win the race. So what would, if you were her coach to give this interview, how would you coach her?
Well, if a person is understated or if a person is humble, that's fine. I just want you to have a will of steel. I don't need for you to vocalize or to radiate your swagger. I don't need that. I need for you to, when they say set and you're ready to go, that's when you turn into a tiger. And everyone be saying, what is that? And you get out of the water, you don't need high fives, you go over and you quietly wait for them to announce the results, which you already know. I just smoked them. You know, I don't want people to vocalize or to radiate something that's not authentic within them. But in competition, if you prepare and you're ready to go, when they say showtime, then you transform into this tiger. And that's when you go out and you beat the competition, and you want them to go, holy smoly, what was that? She didn't seem to have that in her. And you just go, okay. So no, I'll coach them to just be a tiger when it's time to be a tiger.
I see. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Did I miss any question? Did I miss any question from chat? Okay, well, that concludes our question and answer section. I return the podium back to our president.
Oh, thank you. I was actually planning to ask, like, is there any question from the audience? If you have a burning question to ask our world champion, please do it now. Like, I think Marilyn is actually like planning to ask a question. Anyone else want to ask questions before? Oh, Sunny, please.
Mr. Jones, you talked earlier about the fear of failure. I read it on the internet. I'm just asking, what do you tell people when you talk about don't be afraid of the fear of failure? Unmute.
It's a part of winning. You know, failure is the mother of winning. If you don't fail, and makes a difference how many times you fail. The difference is you just sort of get up and dust yourself off and say, well, I screwed that up, and get back on the horse and go riding. The point about failure is that it makes you stronger. It doesn't weaken you. It makes you stronger. It only weakens you if you don't get up, or if you try and say the reason I failed is because Willie told me something wrong, or Mary said that. It's always your failure. It's not anybody else's failure. Accept responsibility for it. Dust yourself off, get up, and get out there again, because failure does not weaken you. It makes you stronger. 100 years ago, we thought that forest fires weakened the forest. We learned that forest fires do not weaken the forest. They make the forest stronger. So don't be afraid to fail. As a matter of fact, if you've never failed, I don't know how you can ever win. I don't know. The formula is failure to win, failure to win. You get up, you try, you fail, you win. And winning is infectious because you don't want to lose. You know, once you start to win, you don't want anything to do with. That's why I was saying it so energetically that I don't want anything to do with second place. No, I'm not going around and showing anybody my second place trophy. I don't have any second place trophies. I won second place trophies. I don't have them. I have one trophy, the World Championship trophy. That's what I have. And that's just what your mindset has to be.